we can see are actually originated on that continent which was called the Pangaea, the only one land. The environmental conditions, definitely, as I'm talking about, and I'm taking the environment and the diversity, both are interlinked. The different environmental conditions produce actually the diversity. As in my previous lecture, environment. First of all, I should explain environment. Environment is actually all these things which are around you, which are surrounding you, and you are interacting with all these things. Things mean four things. Generally, these you are interacting with. One is the atmosphere, air in which you are respiring, the air atmosphere which is surrounding you and protecting you from the harsh UV lights as well. The second thing which you are standing is the uh, soil, which is also called lithosphere. You are walking over the soil. This one is lithosphere. And the third one thing is you are interacting directly or indirectly is water. Water is hydrosphere. Hydrosphere is the third thing, and the fourth thing you are interacting with is the other life means other animals, they can be other plants, they can be, you are interacting with continuously, and this one is called as biosphere. The four things actually constitute the environment: the lithosphere, the atmosphere, the hydrosphere, and biospheres. These things are called as environment, and these things, their interaction, these things generate actually the diversity. As in my previous as in my previous lecture, I have told you about the different model of speciation, how these species are generated. The one I had talked about is the model of speciation was the sympatric, and the second one in which the population separated by the environmental condition into two parts is the allopatric, the geographical way of production of new species or speciation, the allopatric method. These all these things, four things, are called environment, and the environment is the main thing which produce the diversity. As in a previous lecture, I have discussed with you the one way of species generation was the sympatric model of speciation, and the other one was the allopatric. And allopatric method, the environmental condition was totally changed, and because of these environmental conditions, the new species were generated. In the same way, the environmental conditions, the different environments, if we are talking about different environments, it means we are talking about the different number of individuals, we are talking about different number of species, we are talking about different number of communities. It means higher the diversity, higher the environmental condition. For example, in a small piece of earth which has experienced different environmental condition, means different humidity in one part is present, and the other part the humidity level is different, sunlight is different in the part 1 and the sunlight is different in part 2. It means a small portion of earth is experienced two different environmental conditions, and under these two different environmental conditions there would be a possibility to create two different species, more than two different species, or the communities of both these area must be different, because environmental conditions are different. Why these environmental conditions make different species, different community? Because of switching of special genes and switching on of special genes, which are totally linked with the environmental condition. In particular environmental condition, one type of set of gene is expressed, and in the other part of environmental condition, the other set of environmental condition is switch on, and the other one, second one set of the genes is switched off. In the same way, if the environmental condition or the environment uh, is has more diversity, it means it is indication of the higher the diversity. The higher diversity is linked with higher environmental conditions, yeah, environmental diversity. Why? Because these environmental conditions produced the different different species because of these environmental conditions, by switching off and switching on different genes. For example, we can also explain this like in a tropical area of the earth, the human population which is present in tropical area of the earth, and that one which is very close to polar region, like the European countries and North American countries, Canada, etc. The population of these two areas, one is of tropical area which is very close to sun, and the other which is the population of human being which is close to poles or away from the sunlight. The both populations are totally different in their morphology, because the environmental conditions are totally different in both this area of earth. Even though the population is same, human being, both are human being, but they are totally different in these two different region of earth. Why? Because of the environmental condition. Those population, those member which are living in tropical area, they are experiencing more light they are facing, more sunlight they are facing, and those which are present in the polar region, they are experiencing less population, sorry, less sunlight. Therefore, the population of polar region has a less dark complexion, skin complexion, as compared to the population which is present in a tropical area. In tropical area, because the higher pigmentation is required to cope with the higher sunlight, therefore those genes which produce more pigmentation, they will be switched on, and in the cooler region, these genes which produce more pigmentation, they are switched off, because in cooler region the higher pigmentation is not required. Therefore, if we take it a longer period of time, for 1 million year or at least 1000 year, we keep on supposing, the population, both these population, these will develop into new species, because of the these two different ecological set of conditions. In the same way, if we go in next, and these northern pole, and this one is on which the Antarctica is present, is southern pole, and they are permanently frozen and they remain permanently cool. And in the center of pole and tropical region on both side of northern hemisphere and southern hemisphere, the areas are also present which experiencing moderate environmental conditions. They are not very hot, they are not very cool, they are moderate. In summer they are cool, they are hot, but in winter they are cool. These areas of earth on both northern hemisphere and southern hemisphere are called as temperate zone. Up till now, three zones of earth can be identified on earth: the tropical areas, which are present in the center of both tropics, and the polar regions, which are present on the top of the poles or top of the earth, which are permanently frozen and they are cooler region, and those areas which are intermediate between tropical and polar regions are called as temperate zone. Tropical zone, temperate zone, and polar zones, these three zones can be present or can be identified on earth. These tropical area, before going in detail are the other things, before discussing other things, I wish to talk about a little bit about the geography of earth. Next slide. This one is the slide. These lines which are parallel, this line is called as equator. As you can see, this line, which I have told you already, the pathway of sun on which move from east to west, that is called as equator. Here the degree is 0 degree. This pathway is called as 0 degree, and that is called equator. And the parallel to this equator, the different lines you can see parallel lines are also present, which are called as latitudes on both northern hemisphere and southern hemisphere. Northern hemisphere is that part which is half of the part of earth which is present above the uh, equator, and southern hemisphere is that half part of earth which is present on the lower side of the equator up to the south pole is northern hemisphere. The equator actually cut the earth into two parts. Above, the upper one is called as northern hemisphere, which is from equator to north pole, and the lower one from equator to south pole is called as southern hemisphere. And this is because of equator. This is because of equator. And the lines which are parallel move upward on both hemispheres are called as latitudes. And in the same way, these are the latitude. With the lines which are horizontally present on earth are called as latitudes. In the same way, a line is also present in the center of earth from north pole to south pole, which is called as prime meridian, and that prime meridian or Greenwich line is parallel to the earth, and it cut earth into two hemispheres. The eastern part of this line is called as eastern hemisphere, and the western part of this line is called as western hemisphere. And all these lines which are present on different this line is on 0 degree, and in the same way these lines goes from 0 to 90 degree into western hemisphere, and in the same way these lines from 0 to 90 degree in eastern hemisphere, and these lines are called as longitude. In the same way, the equator or the latitude equator is present on 0 degree, and in the same way the 90 lines or 90 degree lines also drawn from equator to north pole, and these are 90 lines, and they are called 90 degree lines which are present in northern hemisphere, and 90 degree lines which are present in